You know what they say about good intentions? They pave the road to hell. Well, in our case, they pave the road to something far worse than hell. They paved the road to becoming the galaxy's most feared species. And trust me, that wasn't exactly what we had in mind when we signed that damn treaty 50 years ago. My name is Keth9, and I'm what you humans would call a diplomat. Though after what I have witnessed, I'm starting to think professional fool might be more accurate. I represent the Hegemony Council, a collection of 17 civilized species that have maintained peace across 4-star systems for over 3 centuries. We are reasonable beings. We negotiate. We compromise. We certainly don't go around conquering entire sectors of space with nothing but recycled criminals and a bad attitude. But humans? Oh, humans are different. 50 years ago, when those strange bipedal creatures first stumbled into our space with their primitive fusion drives and laughably basic weapons, we thought we were dealing with another typical developing species. You know the type. Aggressive tendencies, territorial disputes, occasional wars over resources. Standard stuff. Nothing a good treaty and some supervised integration couldn't handle. The first contact went smoothly enough. Their diplomats, led by someone called Ambassador Patricia Wells, seemed reasonable. Cautious, but reasonable. They spoke of peace, cooperation, mutual benefit. All the right words in all the right order. We were impressed by their adaptability, if somewhat concerned by their rather casual attitude toward violence. Then came the negotiations. "We have a proposal," Ambassador Wells had said, her voice carrying that peculiar human inflection that I have learned to fear. "We have a significant population of individuals who have violated our social contracts. Rather than continuing to house them at considerable expense, we'd like to offer their services to the hegemony." At the time, it seemed like a perfect solution. We had labor shortages across 17 worlds. Mining operations, construction projects, atmosphere processors. Dangerous work that our citizens preferred to avoid. The humans were offering to send their unwanted criminals to serve out their sentences in productive labor. Everyone wins, right? Wrong. So very catastrophically wrong. The first shipment arrived 3 months later. 2,000 human prisoners aboard a converted cargo vessel that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together with prayer. The ship's captain, a grizzled woman named Torres, handed over the manifest with what I now recognize as a distinctly human smirk. "Enjoy yourselves," she'd said. "These boys and girls are going to keep you busy." Busy was an understatement. The prisoners were assigned to Mining Station Kepler 7, a routine asteroid extraction facility managed by the Veltani. The Veltani are methodical, peaceful beings who pride themselves on efficient resource management. They treated the human prisoners with the same professional courtesy they showed all contract workers. Adequate housing, nutritious meals, reasonable work schedules. The humans lasted exactly 18 hours before they staged their first revolt. I received the emergency transmission while reviewing trade agreements in my office on Hegemony Station Prime. The Veltani administrator, Jex-12, was practically vibrating with panic through the subspace link. The humans have seized control of the primary excavation equipment. Jex-12 reported, his translator struggling with the rapid-fire delivery. They have barricaded themselves in Sector 7 and are demanding better coffee. Better coffee. That should have been my first warning sign. That'd be why the time a security team arrived. The humans had not only improved their living conditions, but had somehow increased the station's mining output by 30%. They'd reorganized the entire extraction process, implemented new safety protocols, and established what they called a merit-based advancement system among themselves. "We figured we might as well do the job right," explained their apparent leader, a woman named Captain Lisa Grant, who'd been serving a sentence for something called unlawful appropriation of military assets. She had the sort of calm, calculating demeanor that made seasoned warriors nervous. Your people were doing good work, but they were thinking too small. Too small. Another phrase I should have paid more attention to. The Veltani administration decided to work with the humans rather than against them. It seemed logical. Production was up, safety incidents were down, and the humans appeared content with their improved working conditions. What could go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Within 6 months, the human prisoners had established trade relationships with passing merchant vessels. Nothing major, just small exchanges of manufactured goods for luxury items. Coffee, alcohol, entertainment media, communication equipment. The Hegemony Council saw no harm in it. The humans were serving their sentences, contributing to the local economy, and causing no significant trouble. Then Captain Grant made her first request for technical consultants. "We have got some ideas for improving the operation," she explained to Jex 12 during a routine progress meeting. "But we need some specialists. Engineers, systems analysts, logistics coordinators. Just temporary assignments." The consultants arrived 2 weeks later. 50 humans with various technical backgrounds, all serving sentences for what their justice system classified as white-collar crimes. Embezzlement, fraud, unauthorized data access, corporate espionage. Criminals, yes, but educated criminals with useful skills. That was when things started getting interesting. The consultants began by conducting a comprehensive analysis of the station's operations. They interviewed workers, studied equipment specifications, analyzed supply chains, and reviewed safety protocols. Standard efficiency evaluation procedures. Nothing suspicious about it. Then they submitted their report. The current mining operation is functioning at approximately 12% of theoretical capacity. The lead consultant, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Marcus Webb, explained to the increasingly nervous Veltani administrators. "We have identified 47 areas for immediate improvement and developed a comprehensive optimization plan." The plan was remarkable. It detailed modifications to extraction equipment, reorganization of work schedules, implementation of new processing techniques, and establishment of expanded logistics networks. If implemented, it would increase the station's output by over 400% while reducing operational costs by 30%. The Veltani approved the plan unanimously. 6 months later, Mining Station Kepler 7 was the most productive extraction facility in hegemony space. The human prisoners had transformed a modest asteroid mining operation into an industrial powerhouse that supplied raw materials to half the sector. They'd also established their own internal economy, complete with banking services, recreational facilities, and what they called a continuing education program. And that's when Captain Grant made her second request. "We need more people," she told Jex 12 during their monthly progress review. "Good people. We have got opportunities here, but we are understaffed." More prisoners arrived. This time, 5,000 of them, including individuals convicted of everything from theft and assault to something called creative accounting and unauthorized system modification. They also brought families. Not prisoners, but volunteers who chose to join their convicted relatives in what was increasingly resembling less of a penal colony and more of a human settlement. The Hegemony Council should have been concerned. We should have recognized the signs. But the humans were fulfilling their contractual obligations, contributing to the local economy, and causing no diplomatic incidents. If anything, they were model citizens. Model citizens who just happened to be transforming our understanding of industrial efficiency and resource management. By the end of the second year, human-operated facilities were producing 60% of the hegemony's raw materials. They'd established manufacturing centers, research facilities, and training academies. They'd developed new technologies, improved existing systems, and created economic opportunities that benefited every member species. That they'd also begun recruiting. Not forcing, mind you. Recruiting, offering employment opportunities to non-human citizens who wanted to work in their high-efficiency operations. The pay was excellent, the working conditions were superior to anything else in hegemony space, and the advancement opportunities were unlimited. Thousands of our citizens took them up on the offer. That's when I started getting worried. The third year brought another development that should have set off every alarm in hegemony space. The humans requested permission to establish their own transportation network. Nothing fancy, just some cargo vessels to move materials and personnel between their various facilities. The ships they built were impressive, fast, efficient, well-armed for protection against pirates, and capable of carrying enormous loads across vast distances. They called them merchant vessels, but I have seen enough military hardware to recognize defensive capabilities when I see them. Still, they were operating within the bounds of their agreements, contributing to the greater good and causing no problems for anyone. What reason did we have to object? The fourth year brought the expansion. The humans requested permission to establish operations in the Kepler Belt, the Vega system, and the outer territories of the Centauri sector. Standard expansion requests, properly filed and documented. They even offered to share their improved techniques with other hegemony operations. By the fifth year, human-operated facilities were responsible for 80% of the hegemony's industrial output. They developed new, faster-than-light communication networks, established interstellar trade routes, and created economic opportunities that had raised the standard of living across 17 worlds. They'd also begun offering military consulting services. Pirates are becoming a problem in the outer systems, Captain Grant explained during a council session I attended as a trade representative. We have the expertise to deal with security issues, if you're interested. Their security services were as effective as their industrial operations. Pirate attacks in human-protected space dropped to zero within 6 months. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades became safe and profitable. Merchant vessels that had required military escorts could travel freely. The humans charged very reasonable rates for their services. By the seventh year, I was beginning to understand what had happened. We hadn't hired human prisoners to serve as laborers. We had inadvertently recruited the most dangerous criminal minds from one of the galaxy's most adaptable species and given them unlimited resources, strategic positions throughout our territory, and complete freedom to operate. And they had built an empire, not through conquest or aggression, but through simple competence. They had taken every job we gave them and done it better than anyone thought possible. They had turned prison sentences into business opportunities, transformed punishment into prosperity, and converted exile into expansion. By the 10th year, human operations controlled the majority of hegemony commerce, provided essential services to most member worlds, and maintained the largest private security force in known space. They weren't prisoners anymore. They weren't even employees. They were partners, senior partners. And that's when Captain Grant, now addressed as Director Grant, made her final request to the Hegemony Council. "We have been thinking," she said, addressing the assembled representatives of 17 civilized species with the same calm confidence she'd shown when requesting better coffee a decade earlier. "It might be time to renegotiate our original agreement." The silence in the council chamber was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop in vacuum. 17 species, each with their own cultural concept of shock and horror, all experiencing the same collective realization that they had been magnificently, thoroughly, and completely outplayed. Director Grant stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by 2 advisors who looked nothing like the ragged criminals we'd accepted a decade ago. These were polished professionals in tailored uniforms, carrying themselves with the confidence of people who knew exactly how much power they wielded. Behind them, holographic displays showed production figures, trade statistics, and security reports that painted a very clear picture. The humans didn't just control our economy anymore. They were our economy. The original terms, Grant continued, consulting a datapad with casual efficiency, specified that human prisoners would serve labor sentences in exchange for room and board. Standard stuff, but I think we can all agree that the situation has evolved somewhat beyond those parameters. Supreme Chancellor Voth Prime of the Altarian Collective finally found his voice. "What exactly are you proposing, Director Grant?" "Full partnership status within the Hegemony Council," she replied without hesitation. "Voting rights, territorial claims, and formal recognition of human sovereignty over our current operational zones. In exchange, we will continue providing the services that keep this little corner of the galaxy running smoothly." The audacity was breathtaking. Here was a woman who had arrived in chains, demanding a seat at the table of galactic governance. And the most infuriating part? She had earned it. Counselor Zeth, 8 of the Hadean mining guilds, leaned forward, his optical sensors glowing with agitation. "You are criminals. Prisoners. You have no legal standing to make such demands." Grant's smile was razor-sharp. Really? Because according to our legal analysis, performed by some very talented former corporate lawyers, our original sentences were completed approximately 7 years ago. Everything we have done since then has been voluntary consultation work. The chamber erupted in protest from multiple species. Translators overloaded trying to keep up with 17 different expressions of outrage, confusion, and what I was beginning to recognize as grudging admiration. But Grant wasn't finished. However, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos with practiced authority, we are not unreasonable people. We understand that this represents a significant change to the existing power structure. So we are prepared to make this transition as smooth as possible. She gestured to her left advisor, a tall man with the bearing of someone who'd spent years making life or death decisions under pressure. Colonel Jake Morrison, formerly of the Human Defense Corps, convicted of insubordination for refusing to fire on civilian targets. He'll be heading our new peacekeeping division. Morrison stepped forward and activated another holographic display. This one showed fleet positions, defensive installations, and patrol routes across hegemony space. Ladies, gentlemen, and respected beings of various classifications. He began with military precision. I'm sure you have noticed that piracy, smuggling, and territorial disputes have become virtually non-existent in sectors under human administration. That was putting it mildly. Human security forces had eliminated criminal activity so efficiently that some of our military commanders were beginning to feel obsolete. We are prepared to extend those services to the entire hegemony, Morrison continued. Full defensive coverage, rapid response capabilities, and integrated intelligence networks. All at cost, naturally. At cost, right? Because when you control the industries that produce the materials, determine the labor rates, and manage the supply chains, your definition of cost becomes very flexible indeed. The right advisor, a woman with the calculating gaze of someone who could balance budgets in her sleep, stepped forward next. Dr. Rebecca Torres, formerly a senior economist with the Human Colonial Administration, convicted of exposing corruption in government contracts. I will be managing our Economic Cooperation Initiative. Her holographic display showed trade flows, resource distribution, and economic projections that made my head spin. The human integrated sectors currently show economic growth rates 300% above hegemony averages. She explained with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their favorite hobby. We are proposing a comprehensive economic partnership that will extend these benefits across all member systems. Chancellor Voth Prime was rapidly cycling through colors that indicated stress in his species. And if we refuse your generous offer? Grant's expression didn't change. Something shifted in the air. A subtle tension that made every being in the chamber suddenly remember that these humans had arrived as prisoners and transformed themselves into the most powerful force our civilization had ever encountered. Well, Grant said thoughtfully, that's certainly your prerogative. The hegemony is a voluntary association. After all, if you prefer to terminate our current arrangements, we will naturally respect that decision. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Of course, that would mean withdrawing human personnel from their current positions, shutting down the industrial facilities we have built, suspending the security services we provide, discontinuing the trade networks we have established. Nothing personal, you understand. Just business. The silence that followed was the sound of 17 civilizations contemplating economic collapse, Dr. Torres helpfully activated another display showing projected outcomes. Our economic models suggest that immediate withdrawal of human services would result in approximately 67% reduction in industrial output, complete breakdown of outer system security, and general economic chaos lasting approximately 15 to 20 standard years. However, she continued cheerfully, we are confident that the various member species would eventually develop alternative solutions. Might take a generation or two, but you are all remarkably adaptable beings. I had to admire their technique. They weren't threatening anyone. They were simply pointing out the natural consequences of ending a business relationship. The fact that those consequences would be catastrophic for everyone except the humans was just unfortunate coincidence. Councillor Mex, 7 of the Taurian republics raised a tentative appendage. What about our existing agreements? Our territorial boundaries? Our traditional governance structures? Completely respected, Grant assured him. We are not looking to replace anyone or restructure existing governments. We just want appropriate representation for our contributions to hegemony prosperity. Morrison nodded agreement. Human forces will continue operating under hegemony authority, following established protocols and chains of command. We are proposing integration, not conquest. It was masterfully done. They were offering everything the council wanted to hear, while quietly making it clear that they already possessed the power to take whatever they wanted. The only question was whether we'd rather have them as partners or as competitors. Supreme Chancellor Vothprime looked around the chamber, reading the faces and expressions of his fellow representatives. The math was simple and unavoidable. Resist the humans and face economic disaster, or accept them as equals and maintain the prosperity they'd created. How do we know you won't simply expand your demands later? He asked carefully. Grant's laugh was genuinely amused. Chancellor, we are criminals, not idiots. We have spent the last 10 years proving that cooperation is more profitable than conflict. Why would we change strategies now? Dr. Torres activated one final display showing projected growth figures under the proposed partnership. Integrated human hegemony operations show potential for expansion into 12 additional sectors within the next decade. Current projections suggest a 400% increase in average living standards across all member worlds. Plus, Morrison added with a grin that reminded everyone exactly what kind of people we were dealing with. There are still quite a few human prisoners back on Earth who'd love the opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization. Engineers, scientists, administrators, logistics specialists. Really talented folks who just happen to bend a few rules in creative ways. More criminals. Thousands more brilliantly devious criminal minds ready to be unleashed on an unsuspecting galaxy. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, I found myself wondering what other miraculous improvements they might implement. The vote was unanimous. Not because we particularly want to share power with a collection of human criminals, but because we were intelligent enough to recognize reality when it was presented with charts, graphs, and polite smiles that didn't quite hide the steel underneath. 3 months later, the formal treaty was signed. The Human Hegemony Partnership established humanity as the 18th member of our galactic civilization, with full voting rights, territorial recognition, and economic privileges. 6 months after that, the first wave of new human consultants arrived. 200,000 prisoners serving sentences for everything from tax evasion to military insubordination. They brought their families, their expertise, and their uniquely human ability to look at any system and immediately figure out how to make it work better. Within a year, hegemony space was the most prosperous, secure, and efficiently managed region of the galaxy. And that's how 17 civilized species learned the most important lesson in interstellar relations. Never, ever give humans a job unless you are prepared for them to do it better than you thought possible. The prisoners we'd accepted, as cheap labor, had become our partners, our protectors, and our teachers. They'd transformed punishment into opportunity, exile into expansion, and disgrace into dominance, but they'd also taught us something valuable about ourselves. For all our talk of civilization and order, we'd been thinking small, playing it safe, accepting adequate results when excellence was possible. The humans didn't just show us how to mine asteroids more efficiently or secure trade routes more effectively. They showed us how to dream bigger, work smarter, and never settle for good enough when better was achievable. So yes, we agreed to send our prisoners to space as slaves for an alien race. The only problem was we never quite figured out who the aliens were in that arrangement. Director Grant, now formally recognized as Ambassador Grant, still runs the largest industrial complex in known space. Colonel Morrison commands the most effective peacekeeping force in galactic history. Dr. Torres manages an economic empire that spans 4-star systems. And somewhere back on that little blue world they call home, there are probably more human criminals sitting in cells, dreaming of the day they get their chance to reshape the galaxy. Frankly, I can't wait to see what they come up with next. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, it gets so much better. 5 years after the partnership treaty, I received an urgent communication from the Outer Rim territories. The message came from Commander Alexis Kane, a former human military officer who'd been convicted of excessive initiative during a border conflict. She now managed security operations for the newest human settlements in previously unexplored space. Kef 9, her voice crackled through the subspace communicator with barely contained excitement. You need to get out here. We have found something interesting. Interesting. When humans use that word, it usually means the galaxy is about to change in ways no one anticipated. That I arrived at Frontier Station Omega 3 days later aboard one of the new human transport vessels. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering efficiency, capable of crossing 3-star systems in the time it used to take our fastest ships to traverse a single sector. The crew treated me with the casual professionalism that had become the human trademark, offering excellent coffee and entertainment while we traveled at speeds that should have been impossible. Commander Kane met me at the docking bay, flanked by her usual team of advisors. Dr. Samuel Park, a former bioweapons researcher convicted of refusing to develop planet killers for his government. Professor Maria Santos, an astrophysicist who'd served time for unauthorized disclosure of classified research. Captain Tommy Chun, a logistics specialist who'd been imprisoned for creative interpretation of supply requisitions. Each of them brilliant, each of them dangerous, each of them absolutely essential to whatever the humans were planning next. What have you discovered? I asked as we walked through corridors that bustled with activity. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything in the original treaty specifications. That Kane's grin was the kind that made civilized beings nervous. We have made contact. Contact. The word hit me like a physical blow. With who? 3 new species, Dr. Park explained, consulting his ever-present datapad. The Kythera from the Epsilon sector, the Vort-Hack from beyond the Barrier Nebula, and something calling itself the Collective from coordinates we can't even pronounce. My blood pressure spiked. First contact protocols were established for good reasons. Careful introduction procedures, diplomatic immunity, cultural exchange programs. The sort of methodical approach that prevented interstellar incidents. Please tell me you followed proper first contact procedures. I said weakly. Captain Shin laughed. Dafina Brupe. Commander Kane led us to the station's command center, where massive displays showed star charts, fleet positions, and what appeared to be trade manifests in 3 completely alien languages. The Kythera were having some trouble with asteroid mining in their home system, Kane explained casually. Inefficient extraction methods, poor safety records, limited processing capabilities. We offered to help. They are now producing 4 times their previous output with 0 safety incidents, Professor Santos added. They are also very interested in our educational exchange programs. Educational exchange programs. I was almost afraid to ask. The Vort-Hack had a piracy problem, Kane continued. Their merchant vessels were being attacked regularly. Trade routes were becoming unreliable. Economic development was stagnating. Standard stuff. So you eliminated the pirates, I guessed. Better, Captain Shin said with obvious satisfaction. We recruited them. Of course they did. Only humans would look at a piracy problem and see a human resources opportunity. Turns out most of the so-called pirates were just desperate beings trying to survive in a region with limited legitimate economic opportunities, Dr. Park explained. We offered them jobs, training, and career advancement opportunities, much more efficient than shooting at them. And a collective? I asked, dreading the answer. Commander Kane's expression grew serious. That's the interesting part. They're not like us. Not like any of us. They're a hive mind species, billions of individual organisms sharing a single consciousness. They've been watching galactic civilization for centuries, trying to decide whether to make contact. What convinced them? Us. Professor Santos said simply. They found our approach to problem-solving fascinating. Apparently, Most species they have observed follow predictable patterns. Territorial expansion, resource competition, hierarchical social structures. But humans are weird, Kane finished. We take impossible situations and make them work. We turn enemies into allies, problems into opportunities, disasters into advantages. The collective wants to understand how we do it. A chill ran down my spine. What did you tell them? The truth, Kane said with a shrug. That we are all criminals who got really good at making the best of bad situations. The implications were staggering. 3 new species, each with their own territories, resources, and capabilities. All of them now connected to humanity's growing network of influence. And if the pattern held, all of them would soon be contributing to human-led initiatives that would reshape their entire regions of space. How many? I asked quietly. How many what? How many more species have you contacted? Kane exchanged glances with her advisors. Define contacted. My legs suddenly felt weak. Commander, okay, fine. We have identified 47 potentially habitable systems with signs of intelligent life, she admitted. We have made preliminary contact with 12 species, established trade relationships with 8, and formed mutual defense agreements with 3. 47 systems, 12 species. All of this in the 5 years since the partnership treaty. The galaxy is a big place, Keth 9, Dr. Park said gently. Lots of beings struggling with problems that have relatively simple solutions. Resource management, conflict resolution, economic development, technological advancement. Basic stuff. Basic stuff. To humans, perhaps. To the rest of us, these were challenges that had stumped entire civilizations for millennia. What's the plan? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew. Same as always, Kane replied. Do good work, help where we can, and build something better than what was there before. She activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red dots marked the original hegemony worlds. Green dots showed human settlements and operations. Blue dots indicated the new species they'd contacted. Yellow dots represented systems under negotiation. The pattern was unmistakable. Humanity wasn't just expanding anymore. They were connecting, building networks, creating webs of mutual dependency and shared prosperity that spanned dozens of star systems. We call it the Commonwealth, Professor Santos said with obvious pride. A voluntary association of species committed to mutual cooperation and shared advancement. With humans at the center, I observed. With humans as facilitators, Kane corrected. We have learned that being in charge is less important than being useful. Let everyone else worry about politics and prestige. We'll just focus on making things work. 3 months later, I attended the first Commonwealth Assembly. Representatives from 23 species gathered at New Geneva, a massive space station built in neutral territory using techniques developed by human engineers, materials provided by Kithra miners, and funding arranged through Vorthack trading networks. The assembly hall could accommodate beings of wildly different physiologies and environmental requirements. Aquatic species swam in specialized chambers. Silicon-based life forms communicated through crystalline interfaces, and energy beings manifested and controlled electromagnetic fields. The translation systems handled over 200 languages simultaneously. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Grant, now elderly but still sharp as a laser cutter, fielding questions and suggestions from beings who had never imagined such cooperation was possible. The key, she explained to a curious representative from the insectoid Zephyrian Collective, is to remember that everyone wants the same basic things: security, prosperity, opportunity for their children. The details might vary, but the fundamentals are universal. Universal. That was the word that finally made me understand what the humans had accomplished. They hadn't conquered the galaxy through force or manipulation. They'd done it through empathy, by recognizing that every species, no matter how different, faced similar challenges and deserved similar opportunities. The prisoners we'd accepted 50 years ago hadn't just become partners. They'd become teachers, showing the rest of us how to build something greater than the sum of its parts. 10 years later, The Commonwealth encompasses over 300 star systems and 47 species. Trade flows freely across borders that once required military escorts. Scientific research benefits from perspectives that span dozens of different evolutionary paths. Cultural exchange programs have created art, music, and literature that no single species could have imagined. And at the heart of it all are the humans. The criminals, misfits, and troublemakers who refuse to accept that things had to stay the way they were. They're still arriving, by the way. New shipments of human prisoners seeking their chance to contribute to galactic civilization. Engineers, scientists, artists, administrators, and innovators who have bent rules in creative ways and now want to apply their talents to bigger challenges. The galaxy keeps getting bigger, more connected, and more prosperous. And somewhere in a small office aboard New Geneva Station, Ambassador Grant is probably reviewing the latest batch of applications from Earth's correctional facilities, deciding which criminals to unleash on the universe next. I can't wait to see what they accomplish.